30,000 people climb a narrow Caucasus pass and never come back. No bodies, no battle, just silence. Traders whisper that an entire Khazar host, soldiers, families, slaves, animals, simply vanished into the mountains. Sounds like legend, right? But behind this kind of story lies a real power that once ruled between empires. A kingdom that blocked Islam's advance into Eastern Europe, taxed the Silk Road, and adopted a religion almost no neighbor shared. Tonight, we're going hunting for a ghost, the lost Khazar kingdom. Here's the strange part. For nearly 3 centuries, the Khazars were impossible to ignore. Byzantine emperors wrote to them. Islamic geographers mapped them. Jewish travelers heard rumors of a king who kept the Sabbath on the steppe. Yet today, most people have never heard the word Khazar. How did an empire that sat between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, controlling the gateways into Eastern Europe, fade into rumor and conspiracy theory? To answer that, we need to roll history back to a crumbling giant. In the 6th and 7th centuries, the old order was breaking. The Western Roman Empire was gone. The Eastern Roman, Byzantium, was reeling from war and plague. To the east, the mighty Göktürk Khaganate fractured. Amid that collapse, a Western Turkic group, the ancestors of the Khazars, moved into the rich grasslands north of the Caucasus. They weren't alone. Avars, Bulgars, and other nomads battled for the same pastures. But the Khazars did something different. Instead of just raiding empires, they learned to replace them. And their timing couldn't have been better, or worse. By the mid-7th century, Khazar rulers carved out a domain between the Black and Caspian Seas. Arab chroniclers first mentioned them during the Arab-Khazar Wars, calling them fierce Turkic opponents. Their power base? Mobility and geography. They controlled river routes along the Volga and Don, and the passes through the Caucasus. Instead of static borders, they built a web of tribute relationships. Tribes and towns paid furs, slaves, and silver in exchange for peace. But that wasn't the only advantage. The Khazars sat on the choke point of something far bigger: Eurasian trade. Imagine being the tollkeeper of the Old World. Goods from the Islamic Caliphates, Byzantium, the Volga forests, even distant China, drifted through Khazar territory. The Arab geographer al-Masudi later described Khazaria as a major hub where merchants from all the horizons met. Slaves, honey, wax, furs, silk, and silver dirhams flowed through Khazar customs posts. Their capital, first at Balanjar and later at Itil on the Volga Delta, became a multilingual marketplace. But if trade made them rich, it also painted a target on their back, especially for a rising superpower to the south. In the early 8th century, the Umayyad Caliphate surged north, determined to punch through the Caucasus and into the steppe. The Arab-Khazar Wars turned the region into a killing ground. Battles like Ardabil in 730 saw Khazar forces defeat and kill the Arab general al-Jarrah al-Hakami, shocking the Caliphate. But then, fortunes flipped. Arab counterattacks pushed deep into Khazar lands, briefly forcing a Khazar ruler to accept Islam. Still, the Khazars held the northern line. For Christian Byzantium, there was an unexpected silver lining: a pagan buffer against the Caliphate. The Byzantines watched all this closely. Sometimes they fought the Khazars. More often, they courted them. Emperor Justinian II even married a Khazar princess, later baptized as Theodora in the late 7th century. To Constantinople, Khazaria was both shield and sword, a partner against the Caliphate or the Bulgars when convenient. Diplomacy, marriages, and trade linked the two courts. But something unexpected happened inside Khazaria itself in the 8th or 9th century. Something that would make the Khazars truly unique in medieval history and far more controversial today. Sometime between the 740s and early 9th century, sources disagree, Khazar elites adopted Judaism. Our best evidence comes from later letters, especially the 10th century correspondence between Khazar King Joseph and a Jewish dignitary in Al-Andalus, Hasdai ibn Shaprut. Joseph proudly claims his ancestors chose the Torah over Christianity and Islam after hearing all three faiths debated at court. Arab and Byzantine writers also mention a Jewish Khazar king. Did the whole population convert? Almost certainly not. But a Turkic ruling class publicly embracing Judaism on the steppe? That was unprecedented. Al-Istakri and Ibn Hawqal, 10th century Muslim geographers, describe Khazar society as religiously mixed. In Itil, they say, judges of different faiths administered law for their own communities. The king and many nobles followed Judaism. Many subjects were Muslims, Christians, or traditional pagans. Economically, Khazaria thrived on that diversity. Muslim merchants brought silver from the Abbasid world. Slavic and Finnic tribes sent furs and slaves, and Jewish traders linked Khazaria to wider diaspora networks. But that prosperity masked growing dangers. New powers were rising along the river routes the Khazars thought they controlled. From the north came the Rus, Norse adventurers and traders who integrated with Slavic peoples to form powerful river principalities like Novgorod and later Kiev. The primary chronicle, compiled in the 12th century, remembers the Rus paying tribute to the Khazars. For a time, Khazar officials took payments in silver and even used a distinctive trident tamga mark. But that wasn't the only problem. As the Rus grew richer and more organized, tribute began to chafe. Why keep paying a distant Kargan when you could seize the toll stations yourself? Tribute was the lifeblood of Khazaria, and increasingly, its poison. Slavic and Finnic communities resented Khazar tax collectors. Some were taken as slaves and sold further south. Archaeologists have found hoards of Arabic silver dirhams across Eastern Europe, evidence of this trade web. But silver supplies from the Abbasid world started to falter in the 9th and 10th centuries, destabilizing economies that depended on it. At the same time, steppe politics shifted. New Turkic groups, like the Pechenegs, pressed westward. Khazaria was being squeezed from every direction, and one ambitious Rus prince decided to push back hard. In the mid-10th century, Sviatoslav I of Kiev launched a series of brutal campaigns. Byzantine sources and the primary chronicle agree. He shattered Khazar power. Around 965, Sviatoslav attacked the Khazar fortress of Sarkel on the Don, later known to Slavs as Belaya Veja, and then struck at Itil itself. The details are murky. Our sources are sparse and biased. But by the late 960s, Khazaria, as a major empire, disappears from the written record. No single night of 30,000 vanishings, just cities burned, elites killed or scattered, and tributaries switching allegiance. So what actually happened when Khazaria fell? Most likely, its people didn't vanish. They fragmented. Some Khazar groups probably fled into the Caucasus highlands, others into the Crimea and along the lower Volga. Later medieval sources mention communities that may preserve Khazar echoes, but they're frustratingly vague. Gradually, their distinct name disappears, absorbed into new labels. Kipchaks, Alans, early Crimean groups. Archaeology finds steppe cemeteries and fortifications, but they don't come with identity tags. The lost kingdom didn't evaporate overnight. It dissolved into the human mosaic of the region. Then there's the modern controversy. Were the Khazars ancestors of today's Ashkenazi Jews? In the 19th and 20th centuries, some historians proposed a large-scale Khazar origin for Eastern European Jewry. Today, the consensus of genetic, linguistic, and documentary evidence points elsewhere. Most Ashkenazi Jews descend primarily from Middle Eastern and European Jewish communities, with only limited or uncertain Khazar input, if any. Yet the idea persists in fringe politics and anti-Semitic propaganda. The real Khazars deserve better than conspiracy theories. They were complex, not mythical. So why does this vanished kingdom still haunt us? Because the Khazars stood at a crossroads of empires, religions, and trade, and tried to turn that vulnerability into power. They were Turkic rulers who adopted Judaism, nomads who built cities, steppe raiders who became gatekeepers of the Silk Road. Their disappearance wasn't a single night in the mountains, but a slow erasure by war, migration, and memory. Yet every coin hoard, ruined wall, and half-forgotten chronicle brings them back into view. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the unknown, subscribe for more uninteresting history.